Hi, this is Carl the Cobra Frutch, and you're watching Lights Out.
Natasha Jonas retains the IBF Welterweight Championship of the World with a win over Mikaela Mayer. It was a phenomenal fight. We'll be talking about the fight, the decision, and what's next for both warriors. One of British boxing's most fierce rivalries looks set to take place and give us another chapter as Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall edge even closer to a rematch. The rematch we all want to see, and we'll be talking about it, and we'll be asking what happens if the rematch does go down. This is Faisal for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law, and this is podcast 71 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. And with me, as always, I'm delighted to be joined by my main man, Mr. Mohsin Gulsher, aka Ron. Ron, good evening. I hope you're well. Thank you very much, as always, for jumping on the weekly edition of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. How you doing? How's the family? And more importantly, how good was it to see our first UK boxing show of the year of 2024?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me once again. Yeah, really enjoyed that classic fight that we saw headlining, that Jonas fight, which we're Natasha Jonas and Mikaela Mayer, which I'm looking forward to talking about, and the undercard of that. So I'm excited for the next few weeks as well. We've got a few fights coming up, which we've got the Dan Aziz and Boatsy fight. We've got the Fury, which we've been in anticipation for forever now. So it's been a good start to the year. So I'm sure it's only going to get better.
Fingers crossed. I mean, it was a good way to start the year with a very good show up in Liverpool, which I was, happy enough to attend. We've got quite a bit to talk about today as well. After 7 outtakes, we finally got over that sort of hurdle. So before we do jump into your quick fire question, Ron, just a quick few friendly reminders out there to the viewers. If you haven't already, please make sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on the bell for more Lights Out Boxing content. Check us out on all of our social media platforms. And if you want to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, links are going to be below in the description. Ron, fire away, my man. The first quick fire question after our first UK show of the year. Again, guys, just to put you on note, I do not know what the quick fire question is, so I've had no time to prepare for this. So try not to hammer whatever I give my answer to. Ron, floor's all yours, my man.
Okay, this question's personal to you, actually, and I'm quite envious of your son. He's rubbing shoulders with, boxing kind of legends, promoters, meeting with Johnny Nelson.
Hold on, Ron. Hold on. You've met your fair share as well, all right?
No, not close to him. I'm
gonna Tyson Fury.
I'm a bit jealous here, a bit green envy here. So, right. So this is a question for you in regards to So it's a bit of a hypothetical one. So just imagine tomorrow your boy says, "Dad, I'm going to turn professional." Okay.
Okay.
And obviously his dad, you know a thing or two about boxing. Who would be your dream team for backing your son? So I'm talking about dream team, about trainer, promoter, manager, you name it. What would you go with?
Right. Okay. Fair enough. That's actually a good question. Promoter Eddie Hearn.
Okay.
That's no disrespect to any of the other promoters out there. Manager, I'd want me and you to manage him because we know quite a bit about boxing. Anybody could be a manager. You just got to get a managing license. It's not an easy job. Of course, I'm not trying to say that, but we'd manage him. Trainer. Obviously, my son is coming up to 2 years old, so I don't know if Freddie Roach would be around in 15.
Just imagine he was turning to
Okay.
Right,
let's just put it. Freddie Roach. I'd want either Freddie Roach or Costa Motto. But obviously, if it was up to me, but Costa Motto, God rest his soul, is no longer with us. So it'd be Freddie Roach because I just think Freddie Roach sort of is the best example to use for young fighters. You look at that relationship with Manny Pacquiao; it was a very long relationship. It was a successful relationship. Cutman, Jacob Stitch Duran, very good cutman, featured in a lot of the Rocky movies, and a lot of the fighters use him. Tyson Fury's used him as of late. That's what the team would be. Promoter Eddie Hearn, manager me.
I want to add another bit to that. If you could tell him one fighter to model himself on in terms of boxing style,
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd
Okay.
Mayweather, yeah.
You know, just how he carries himself in and out of the ring. So that would be your man.
And
Floyd
not only that, Ron, I mean, you know, my mortgage would be paid. I'd never have to spend a penny again in my life. And on top of that, you'd have the greatest fighter to have ever lived, in my opinion.
Right.
That is what Floyd is. What about
Okay.
you, mate?
Oh gosh, I've got two daughters. I mean, you know who I'm a big fan of in terms of trainer. It would be Ben Davison. I think
Yeah.
seeing who he's worked with in boxing, you know, working with AJ, and he's brought out something really good in AJ, and I'm looking forward to that relationship continuing. Gotta say, Eddie Hearn, just you know, meeting him as well in life and face to face, which was great. Promoter, yeah, it's going to be someone, you know, you got manager, someone that you trust. So I think me and you, we could do another duo again there. Who else? I think. Okay, I wanted to ask you one more thing about you. So you said Floyd Mayweather. I would say someone like Manny Pacquiao. That would be my kind of thing.
Well, let's just hope that your daughter doesn't run into the female version of what's the guy that knocked him out? One Manuel
Marquez.
But
Fair enough.
listen, you said Manny Pacquiao. You can't knock that choice. 8 division world champion, one of the greatest fighters of all time. I've chosen Floyd. That's a great question, and there's a reason why you get this role now, Ron, because your questions are ones that I couldn't even think of. So yeah, guys, just to like sort of sum it up, if you had a child, who would you want their team to be, i.e., promoter, manager, trainer, and cutman? Get yourself involved in the comment section. Ron, as I said, we've got quite a bit to talk about, and we're off the back of our first UK show of 2024, and it was in Liverpool, one of the greatest cities in the world. I was out there for the fight, and fight week, Natasha Jonas successfully defending her IBF welterweight championship of the world against America's very own Mikaela Mayer. Great fight. Her coach, I believe his name is Al Mitchell, said that this is going to be the Hagler versus Hearns of women's boxing. And it lived up to expectation. It was a very good fight. It had everything you'd wanted. And in the end, Natasha Jonas victorious via split decision. Ron, I'm going to start off if you don't mind.
Please do.
I thought both females fought very well. I thought Mikaela Mayer grew into the fight later after round 3, which is probably what cost her the fight. I thought Natasha Jonas fought fire with fire. And just as, I mean, obviously we were back and forth on WhatsApp, just as if it seemed as if Mikaela Mayer was gaining the advantage in the fight, because I said that I reckon she could stop her at some point because she was landing some very serious punches. And as the fight was going on, the better Mikaela Mayer got, the better Natasha Jonas got. And I think the early start to Natasha Jonas and sort of the late finish is what got her over the finishing line. What did you make of the fight?
Yeah, it was really great, you know, spectacle for women's boxing. Thoroughly enjoyed that fight, you know, back and forth. Scorecards surprised me a little bit as well. It's interesting what Natasha Jonas's trainer said, that in order for you to win, you know, be the challenger, you need to do something extra amazing. And I thought,
sort of grab the belt away from her. That's
yeah, you have to kind of,
I saw how Sam Jones reacted to that on Twitter.
Yeah.
You
know, I was gutted for her, you know, for considering what Mikaela Mayer's been through in her career. You know, she's the almost gal. You know, she came up short against Baumgardner. You know, obviously we know the controversy that's happened since then. You know, her failing a drugs test. I don't know what's come of that. And there, you know, she kind of felt really hard done by. And a lot of fans, a lot of people that were watching that, they all felt the same. A lot of them felt the same, that was, you know, Mikaela Mayer's night. You know, she should have been crowned champion. So, I mean, I'm not surprised for hearing calls for a rematch of that. Let's play it back. I thought that Mikaela Mayer in the late round was landing the cleaner shots. Someone even made a comment, I think Sam Jones responded to, and said if it was a 3-minute round, you know, Natasha Jonas would have been, you know, out of there. So I don't know what you thought of that. what you
Well,
think of that?
it's as I said, every time I thought Mikaela Mayer sort of had her in a position where she could even potentially maybe go on to score a knockdown or even, force a stoppage, Natasha Jonas just got better. Like I said, she fought fire with fire. I thought Mikaela Mayer landed the better punches, the more deadlier punches. And
Cleaner punches as
the
well, I
cleaner
reckon.
punches, yeah. I thought Mikaela Mayer won the fight, but it was a very close fight. I mean, I think someone in the Sky Sports studio said that those close rounds could have gone either way. It wasn't. It wasn't a robbery. I think I might have said robbery, but it wasn't. I've watched the fight back. Every round was very close, and I think Mikaela Mayer should be extremely proud of herself, jumping up in weight, taking on the number one fighter in that division, which is Natasha Jonas. And it was a great advert for women's boxing. It's going to kind of lead to my next point. I don't think we should have 3-minute rounds. I think this 2-minute rounds, because you've got 60 seconds less. That's what makes women's boxing so good right now. So would I like to see it back? Natasha Jonas has said after the fight and throughout the last few days that she reckons this is her last year in boxing. So if it's her last year in boxing, she's won belts, two-weight world champion, unified champion. I think now it's all about what she can get out of the sport, and the fights with the likes of the Katie Taylors. They're the big money fights, and it's a fight I'd love to see. I'd listen. I'd love to see Jonas Mayer again, but you've got to look at the bigger picture here. Natasha Jonas has won belts. She's unified. She's been a multi-weight weight champion. Go out there and get the biggest paydays now. What have you got? 2 or 3 left?
She's 39 years of age.
And she's a credit to women's boxing.
Fantastic.
She's got a mural up in Liverpool. You go through Liverpool, you see murals of Klopp, Van Dijk, Gerrard. She deserves it, man, because she is one of Liverpool's greatest, not just fighters but also athletes. And I think, I was ringside, Ron, yeah, and I saw Mikaela Mayer land some big punches. Yeah, they were clean, crisp punches, and it might have knocked anybody else out on the night. But she's got that will, she's got that drive, and as I said, she's the best example in women's boxing right now for me. She had a lot of decisions go away early on in her career. She carried on plugging away, and she is where she is today. And hats off to the lady. You can't fault her. I mean, I told you what I'd like to see her do next, but what do you think is the right move next for her, Ron?
I'd like to rewind that back. I think that would be a great fight. There's also Jessica McCaskill in that division as well. So she wants to fight for another belt. So, I mean, the world's an oyster basically. So it's up to her. She wants the biggest payday, rightly so. She's 39. Get out while she's got everything intact. If she was to retire tomorrow, you said it there. How she's kind of thought of highly in Liverpool with murals, but in British boxing, she's done us proud. She lost, against Katie Taylor, and she's come back from that. She got stopped, didn't she, by I can't pronounce the name, Obanuf, earlier on in her career as well. So that was setbacks that she's had, but look, she's 39 and she's come across. And she's been involved in a war with, another talented fighter, Mikaela Mayer. So it's all doors are open at the moment, I would say, for her.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to see what she do next. What she does next. And I think, look, if she chooses to fight a Katie Taylor, Jessica McCaskill for a money fight, 39 years of age, been involved in the sport a very long time, former Olympian, accredited to the sport, I'll be happy with whatever decision she makes because, like I said, Ron, multi-weight world champion, former unified champion, whatever route she chooses next, back her on it. But again, great fight. I believe Mikaela Mayer will come again. I believe she wins a world title again. And who knows, maybe we might get the rematch. Only time will tell what's going to happen. Also on the undercard, Zak Chelli became the new British super-middleweight champion by beating Jack Cullen. Credit to Zak Chelli, he lost his last fight to Mark Jeffers. I was there the night he lost to Cody Davis. So that was 2 defeats at British domestic level, and then you're kind of thinking, if he loses this rematch because he fought Jack Cullen, during lockdown in the Eddie
You
Hearn's
drew against him, innit?
Eddie Hearn's fight camp, back garden fight camp. So the pressure was on him massively in this fight, but I was there, and I thought he performed. I thought the performance was good enough to win the fight. It wasn't a great fight because a lot of people had it down as potentially the fight of the night, but it wasn't a great fight, and he done enough to win the fight. Jack Cullen, listen, he's a strong character. He's a tough son of a gun, but I just think on the night, Chelli had too much for him. But now the fact that he's obviously come back from a defeat to go on and capture the British title run. What do we do next with Zak Chelli? I mean, when you talk about 168 pounds, I mean, the fight we've got on this weekend, Munguia Ryder, and you look at Canelo, Benavidez, Caleb Plant. What do we do next with these fighters?
Well,
especially Zak Chelli now that he is the number one man in the British division.
I mean, listening to Johnny Nelson talking about him, he said this is his level. He's at this British, kind of Commonwealth kind of level. I think the next level, it will be a massive jump if he's kind of going on the world level. So, I mean, Zak Chelli is 26 years old. He's young. He's still got to grow in this boxing game. I think, why not take him up to a European level fight, or maybe another good tougher British fight that he can have? That's my. There's no rush with him, so just plan the next few fights. Otherwise, another defeat, it sets him, really back in his career. Then.
Well, I mean, listen, Johnny Nelson, one of my favorite guys in boxing. I got to disagree with that comment. You're not going to stay at British level for the rest of your career. I mean, you're 26 years old. Okay, there's Callum Simpson. There is that rematch with Mark Jeffers. There's some decent fights at British domestic level, but I think you defend it once, maybe twice, then you go after the European, and then that's sort of where where you're going in your career. If you can get past European level, he's got past British level. I think he can get past European level, but he's 26 years old. He's still a baby in the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Zak Chelli right now, defend it maybe once or twice, and then look at European level. I agree. I think that should be the next move. Put him at European level after maybe one or two defenses. But you mentioned Callum Simpson. It's a great fight. I like that fight.
Yeah, he's talking a good fight. In the Sky Sports kind of interviews, and he is saying what he would do, and he would put them out. So, could we see maybe a rematch with Mark Jeffers at some point?
Well, Mark Jeffers also won on Saturday night, beating Jermaine Brown. And listen, I like this Mark Jeffers kid. I was there the night he beat Zak Chelli. He stepped in on as a 2-week replacement. And he flipped the script. He turned up, didn't make no noise, just went about his business, performed brilliantly. He fought Jermaine Brown on Saturday night. He damaged his hand in the second round. And he said that he was in sparring mode session, and he goes, he needs bigger and tougher challenges. And if you watch our interview with him, he said he fancies the winner of Munguia versus Ryder. He's a confident kid.
Wow.
He's managed by Kevin Marie. He's got a good team behind him. And I do believe that maybe he is the sort of secret weapon in this British domestic level. Who knows? Maybe a fight with Callum Simpson could be next, or maybe he might fight Jack Cullen. But I do believe, I don't think we'll see Zak Chelli versus Mark Jeffers in a rematch. I remember interviewing Kevin Marie after the Mark Jeffers win, and he said that after the win against Zak Chelli, on an 8-day notice, they got offered the European title fight, and they accepted it. But the guy who holds the European title, I can't remember what his name is, didn't get back to Mark Jeffers and his team. And Kevin Marie said that this guy has got the balls to fight anybody. So listen, who knows, man? It could be a new breath of fresh air up at 168 in the British domestic level. It's exciting times, man. Not just world and European level, but British domestic level. You've got some really good fighters, and you've got a couple of decent fights to be made there. We'll stay on the 168 division, because Jaimie Munguia takes on John Ryder this Saturday night in Phoenix, Arizona. Listen, very good fight, good test for Munguia. 42-0 with 33 KOs. John Ryder 32-6, obviously coming off the back of the defeat to Canelo Alvarez. I remember a few years ago, Ron, me and you sat down and, you said to me, outside of the Furies, the Crawfords, the Usyks, and the Spencers, the Bivols, who's your next favorite fighter? And I mentioned Munguia. Now, Munguia, he's got some good wins on his record. Liam Smith, he was involved in probably Fight of the Year last year with Derevyanchenko. But he's not had that sort of big fight yet where it's got not just the average boxing fan, glued onto, but he's just not been in that fight where everybody's thinking, yep, looking forward to seeing this one. I think this John Ryder fight gives a little bit more coverage to the outer boxing fans. But this is a fight that he's got to win, because I do believe he wins this fight on Saturday night, he's going to be looking to get a Canelo Alvarez or a Benavidez, or maybe, a Caleb Plant or Demetrius Andrade. But everybody expects him to win on Saturday night, Ron. But is this the biggest fight of his career, given the fact that he is close enough to Canelo and David Benavidez?
Yes, I think so. I mean, if you look at John Ryder, look at the experience that he brings. He's been in with some really good names himself, like, Ryder's been with Daniel Jacobs, Saul Alvarez. So that would be a really good name to have on his record as well. So Munguia, yeah, I think he just needs that breakout fight, that name on his resume to kind of get the attention of, Canelo's and the names that you mentioned, Andrade and so forth. So I really hope. I mean, this kid is a good, big thing in that division, in the 168 division. So, but John Ryder won't be any easy walkover. So he, and John Ryder, I read his recent interview. He said, "Look, if I don't win this, that's me done. That's my career done. Where do I go from there?" He's got 6 defeats on his record, so he'll be kind of making a point to prove to himself and to the boxing community that he still belongs there. He should be up there with the big fights. If he does a surprise, John Ryder will be on everyone's lips, and people will be kind of associating him with bigger fights in the future. But let's see.
As I asked you, as I said, that the eyes are going to be a lot more focused on this fight, and is this the biggest fight of his career? There was definitely a bit of focus on the Derevyanchenko fight, and that was, in my opinion, fight of the year in 2023. And if it wasn't for that stoppage towards the end, he may have even lost that fight on points. So he's got to be a lot better against John Ryder. Look, you know what you're going to get with John Ryder. He's tough, he's durable. He's not one of those opponents that likes to turn up to sort of lay down. He doesn't turn up to make up the numbers. He's a guy that likes to believe he turns up to fights to win fights. However, I don't want to see Munguia win this fight on points. I want to see him make a statement. But at the same time, it's not going to be easy because, as we said, this is a tough and durable opponent in John Ryder. Now, let me ask you a question, Ron, right? Yeah. We all know the man of the division is Canelo Alvarez right now. That guy is going to choose who he fights, where he fights, and for however much he wants, yeah? If you're Canelo Alvarez, yeah, you've got, in my opinion, you've got 2 choices right now. Obviously, you've got Benavidez. We saw what he done to Demetrius Andrade. And obviously, depending on what happens on Saturday night, let's say Munguia does blast out John Ryder. If you're Canelo Alvarez right now, who do you choose? Do you choose Jaime Munguia, or do you choose David Benavidez as your next opponent? Because that's all the fans are going to accept. Because I think right now, with the way boxing is, they're more interested in the Haneys and the Tanks. Canelo, in my opinion, isn't really the number 1 talked about fighter. He's probably maybe one of the number 1 fighter in the world, but the appeal is not there anymore in terms of, who's Canelo fighting next? And to get that appeal back, right, if you understand what I'm saying, he's got to either fight Bivol next, or he's got to fight David Benavidez next. But yeah, who do you think he goes after? Let's say Munguia wins on Saturday night out of Munguia and David Benavidez.
I fancy that Benavidez fight. But back to your point, I mean, Canelo, what has the man got to do? Look at his list of fights that he's had in the last few years. Jamel Charlo, Ryder, Gennady Golovkin, Bivol, which he lost to, obviously on points. Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders. So he is, beating top fighters, in that division. So he's not ducking anyone. And he is the cash cow. So he's the one that everyone's running after, wanting for that dream fight, because they know they're going to make million. So, and he's not looking to retire anytime soon. He's, so I would want him to fight Benavidez, and it's going to be who's next kind of scenario. I mean, well, what do you think? Would you reckon he takes the Benavidez fight, or did you go for Munguia? If you're the matchmaker there,
there's a lot of talk about him fighting Jamal Charlo.
Okay.
Yeah, he's beaten Jamel, who went up in weight, and then there's
that
Jamal
was a
Charlo.
fight.
Yes,
I mean,
it was.
It was a bore. I mean, I didn't enjoy that at all. He didn't want to engage. So I hope his brother can do a lot better than what he's done.
Well, his brother had his first fight in a few years on the Andrade Benavidez card, and it wasn't a good performance. However, it was enough to win. I just honestly think right now,
See, what that been for his legacy if he fights the Jamal Charlo, who's just come back after 2 years, wasn't it?
Nothing. No.
So
no.
I hope not.
I like the fight with Benavidez. I think that's a great fight. And when I said about Canelo losing that appeal, I didn't mean Canelo as a whole. I just mean people aren't interested to see who he's going to fight next, unless it is a Bivol or a Benavidez, or even a Munguia. Look, I get a bit of stick when I say this, but I love the EubankJr fight with Canelo. Look, as much as we rip into Asif, yeah, I believe EubankJr turns up to try and knock Canelo out. I want to see someone have a go at Canelo. Okay, Bivol kept him at bay. He didn't allow him to bully him. He didn't allow Canelo to come forward. And when he did, he made Canelo look average, yeah? I want to see someone come into a Canelo fight with Canelo's game plan. And whatever we say about EubankJr, he's going to turn up to have a go. That's what you get with EubankJr. It's the kitchen sink and everything else. And when we speak about Chris EubankJr., I was in Liverpool for the show. Liam Smith was there with the rest of the Smith brothers. Kell Brook was there. There's a lot of talk right now. What's going on with Chris EubankJr.? Is he going to fight a third fight with Liam Smith? Kell Brook said he likes the idea of coming out of retirement if the fight is right. There's only 2 fights, in my opinion, for him to come back for, which is Liam Smith and Chris EubankJr., even though I don't think he needs to come back in. So you've kind of got a little mix going on right now. So let's say EubankJr. can't get a fight with a Canelo, which I don't think will happen. There's Janabek, who holds one of the world titles in middleweight. I don't think that's a fight that EubankJr. is interested in because there's not much money behind it. But there is a bit of money involved with a third fight in Liam Smith, and there's probably a payday involved with Kell Brook as well, because it's a British domestic showdown, and they'll probably go to Manchester. What's next for EubankJr., but also Liam Smith and Kell Brook? I mean, do you think EubankJr. Smith 3 or EubankJr. Kell Brook is a fight that the public wants to see run?
Do we want to see a Kell Brook come back?
No, I don't.
He went off on when we spoke about this at length. He went off in the sunset after beating his old foe in Amir Khan, and we're like, look, Kell, you've done it. You've been a world champion. You've been in good fights with the Golovkins. You've been in with Errol Spence. You gave us some really good fights, like Sean Porter as well. Let me add to that. So what has he got left to prove? I guess a lot of these boxers, it's kind of what to do after their career comes to an end, and it would be sad. I really think that Chris Eubank Jr., who we saw put on a good performance in that rematch, I think he would wipe the floor with. We don't know what kind of shape he's in. His ring rust. How many years has it been since the American fight?
Coming up to 2 years, mate.
2 years. That's how long he hasn't fought, and he's had mental health issues. He's blown up in weight. So what mental space is he in? Do I want to see the rematch? Well, the trilogy. Not really fast, really.
It's 1-1 though, Ron. It is 1-1.
Not really. It is
1-1 though, Ron.
Doesn't really do much for either their careers, kind of thing. And I think Chris Eubank's thinking probably, I got the last laugh. Let's move on.
It's interesting to see what EubankJr. does next.
I mean, that Conor Benn thing went on for far too long, and
listen,
I kind of love
the Conor Benn fight's not going anywhere. Okay,
it's not, but
that fight will happen
unless he sorts out his drama with the British Board of Boxing Control. But that's not happening anytime soon.
In my opinion, there's only one guy that can make the Conor Benn fight with Chris EubankJr. That's Turki Al Sheikh. But listen, EubankJr is a prize fighter. He's not going to turn
course.
down a huge payday. Conor Ben is obviously in the sport to make money as well as legacy. So that's the one guy that we can only hope for that makes this fight. And fingers crossed it is a fight that happens because it's a fight we want to see. But look, I mean, when you look at it either way though, Ron, whatever you say about Brook and Smith, they've won a world title yet. Chris Eubank Jr. hasn't. And as we spoke about this in the past, there is that route to fight Janibek for the WBO world title. Janibek fought Denzel Bentley. He didn't look that good. When you're 34, 35 years of age, this is the point of your career where I believe he's made enough money. But in terms of the success as being a world champion, it's not there yet. So what do you do? I mean, obviously we know now there's a possibility of him currently continuing to work with Bomac. There's also huge domestic fights, and there's also huge fights in terms of world elite level fighters. So what do you do now with Chris Eubank Jr.? What does he do next? Because I honestly believe, in my opinion, now this has got to be the year where he ends the year as a world champion.
I mean, he hasn't fought since that Liam Smith fight. When was that Liam Smith fight?
August or September, I believe.
God, I mean, we're now in an age where we got people like heavyweights fighting 3 times a year.
Yeah, Ron, that's only been happening recently.
Which is good. This is what I'm saying, that someone like Chris Eubank, who does draw a lot of attention, people are interested. He's clickbait. Whenever he's on screen, you will get eyes focused on him. So he needs to kind of jump on that, and it depends on his priorities. What are his priorities? Does he want to make more money, or does he want legacy? Like what his dad had. Winning world titles and being in great fights. So, yeah, you can go down that. Having these domestic tear-ups with a retired Kell Brook, which doesn't do anything for his legacy. People will say he should have won. He would have won that fight anyway. Liam Smith fight, you can have the third fight if he wants to. Conor Ben, that seems like a drama that needs to just resolve itself before that fight can even take place. So that Janibek fight, I thought that would be the route he would take. He's been desperately trying to hunt that big fight with a Golovkin. I don't know if that will happen.
There was also talks of him going down the IBO route, and I'm like, come on. You paraded that IBO title around the Brighton and Hove Albion Stadium. I mean, I can get the fact that you wanted Golovkin. If you're not going to get a world title shot at elite world level and you're not going to fight Liam Smith, move up to 168, go after Caleb Plant, Demetrius Andrade, go after those boys, because the meat up there is a lot bigger than the meat down at 160. For me, it's got to be Liam Smith free, or it's got to be any one of the world champions at 160, 168 pounds. I still love the idea of seeing another fight with Billy Joe Saunders, but Billy Joe Saunders has not fought coming up to 3 years now. So we don't know what's going to happen next. But either way, I think Liam Smith should look to sort of maybe move on from this whole chapter with Chris Eubank Jr. and try to keep himself active. If Kell Brook is coming back into boxing, you heard TalkSport when they interviewed him at the fight the other night. They don't want him to fight again because he's had such a good career. He's got nothing else to prove. And towards the end of his career, he took a lot of punishment against Golovkin and Crawford. You don't want to see the guy whose biggest win of his and Spence. You don't want to see a guy who's just had the biggest win of his career against Amir Khan come back after 2 years later and get annihilated. I agree with you. He bowed out the best way possible by beating Amir Khan, his old foe, his old rival enemy. It's going to be interesting to tell. But what we do know next is that we could be getting a rematch between Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall. Jack Catterall has removed himself away from a world title eliminator, and it looks as if the next fight with him is going to be that huge rematch with Josh Taylor. You have to go back 2 years ago when they fought in February 2022. We all know what happened that night. A controversial decision went into the favor of Josh Taylor, even though 99% of the boxing world believed Catterall won the fight, especially how he dominated and obviously putting Josh Taylor down on the canvas. I just think, right, Josh Taylor, yeah, he's had 2 points in his career where they were real low points. The defeat to Teofimo Lopez in his last fight, which was his first defeat, and now obviously this Jack Catterall story, which has been lingering over him since the night the first fight happened. And if you ask me what's hurt him the most, it's the backlash after the Catterall fight. The Teofimo Lopez fight must have hurt, but I'm pretty sure it was he got over it. This Jack Catterall thing has really, really taken its toll on him because he wasn't good against Teofimo Lopez. He had a lot of time out of the ring after the fight with Catterall. So this is a fight that, in my opinion, makes sense for him to take because he needs to now go out there and prove a point and finally settle the score with Jack Catterall. But for British boxing run, it's very good that we're going to get the rematch and both fighters are now on the same path in terms of this fight happening next.
About bloody time. It's taken 2 years for us to, the back and forth, when the rematch was going to happen, and then Josh Taylor got himself injured, then it got postponed, then it got cancelled. Then Josh Taylor pursued a fight against Teofimo, and we know how that ended. So, yeah, and this has not left him. People haven't the boxing fraternity hasn't forgotten about this performance against Catterall, where, rightly so, I totally agree, he was robbed of, a career-defining moment for him.
Not just any career-defining moment, the undisputed championship of the world he was robbed of.
I know that wasn't part of the script. And we spoke about. Well, I remember doing a podcast on that, and that was a closing door kind of moment because that could have been the gateway to bigger fights for Jack Catterall. He could have made a lot more money than he has right now. So I'm glad that, I don't know, has that fight been signed? Is it the dotted line and the I's been dotted and the T's been crossed?
He's pulled out the final eliminator to take this fight, so I should imagine that this fight is going to get announced. Hopefully, at the early stages of February. Maybe it'll happen in April or May. But either way, it's the fight that we need to see. Do you know what though? I mean, he done an interview with Talk Sport at the fight on Saturday night, and I was right behind him. And he said that he feels as if he's not been given the credit that he's deserved. Because when you look at Josh Taylor, one of the best fights I ever watched in boxing was his fight against Regis Prograis.
Yeah,
he won that Muhammad Ali trophy. He's involved in some good fights, but the boxing world seems to forget this guy is a former undisputed world champion. Right, the guy has climbed to the very pinnacle of the sport, and yet one bad performance against Jack Catterall, and that's all gone out the window. And I actually feel sorry for this guy because when you talk about Calzaghe, you talk about Prince Naz, when this guy retires, Ron, he's got something on them that maybe no other British fighter might ever have. And that's an undisputed world title on his record. Now, Tyson Fury might become that in a couple of weeks when he fights Alexander Usyk. He might not be, but one thing that's guaranteed is that Josh Taylor has won an undisputed world championship before. So, do you think the backlash and in terms of how he's been treated by the fans is harsh? And do you think that maybe we do need to give him a bit more respect for what he's accomplished in this sport?
Oh, look, no doubt, you can't knock what he's done being an undisputed in that way. He was, the last 2 performances, Jack Catterall and obviously Teofimo Lopez, have kind of tarnished his career, a lot. And he's kind of using this fight, the rematch, to kind of right a few, correct a few wrongs that's happened, and to kind of say, actually, I am as good as people have made out as. Look, he's proud. He's up there as one of the best Scottish boxers ever. I think up there with Ken Buchanan. I think is it Ken Buchanan. Yeah. So I think there is an element of harshness towards him. It happens. Hats off to Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez is been in, he's beaten the likes of Lomachenko, lost against Kambosis, he lost against. So, he's no mug that he's lost against, and he's on the up again. And he just caught Josh Taylor on a bad night. So, I'm just as a fan really excited that if that fight gets made, I'm looking forward to the gloves are off kind of moment to see what gets said to each other this time around and how they approach the fight, how they learned from the previous performance. But that was, was it how many years ago did you say? Two years ago?
2022 in February, yeah. There's been
So they're at different points in their careers. Catterall's fought twice. He's fought against Jorge, an aging kind of Jorge Linares, who's at the end of his career. So yeah, it'll be a good spectacle. Let's just see.
If you've been watching the back and forth these guys have been having on social media, these guys cannot stand each other, and this definitely sells, and this definitely is, my opinion, probably sells out maybe the AO Arena in Manchester, maybe even the O2. You'd have to put on a couple of the.
Did you hear what Josh Taylor said about this? Where the fight takes place, he said, "No, I don't want it to be in Saudi, even though I'll get probably a lot more money. I want it. It's a British. It's British. It's going to be on British soil."
And fair play for him to saying that. Listen, like I said, Ron, look, I put my hands up. I believe Catterall did beat him, but I've never once said he's shit or.
Oh no, those words can't be used towards Josh Taylor. Look,
Ron, the guy's a former undisputed world champion. He's going to go down as one of Britain's greatest ever fighters, whether people like it or not. These idiots out there, shit fighter, overrated, just throws punches. His head uses his head as the. Learn about the sport. The guy's won the undisputed world championship. All right, okay. He's had a couple of bad performances. It happens, okay. Some of the greatest fighters ever to put gloves on have lost fights. It's part and parcel of the game. But however, though, Ron, if he does not win this rematch with Jack Catterall, it's a very, very long road back. But then we talk about what's changed in 2 years. Jaimie Moore and Jack Catterall will believe that they win the fight. Josh Taylor, Joe McNally believe that they've got to be a lot better, which he knows he will. He knows that performance wasn't good enough. He knows he's going to have to be a lot better. But I think when the spotlight's on him and the pressure's on him, I think that's when you see the best version of Josh Taylor. And hopefully we get the rematch, and hopefully we get it before the summer. And I do think Josh Taylor will win the rematch. I really do believe he wins the rematch. And I want him to become a two-weight world champion because I'm a huge, huge fan of the guy. But Ron, what do you reckon happens if we get the rematch?
I'm Team Catterall.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think he feels he's had he had Josh Taylor's number from last time. Sadly, the last two performances we haven't seen the best of Josh Taylor. Could he be on the decline? He's 33 years of age. Have we seen his best days behind him? That's a question mark I would raise. But look, regardless, it's going to be a great fight if it happens. I'm looking forward to the build-up. Please, boys, continue the back and forth on the social media where they're just completely insulting each other and just have pure bad blood between the two. It's a shame that this fight hasn't happened sooner. But look, I don't blame Josh Taylor. Went over to the US, fought against Teofimo, came up short. At least he's got this to fall back on now.
It's going to be a very, very fiery fight week. When fight week eventually does happen, we're still waiting for an announcement of a date and a venue, and hopefully we're going to get that announcement soon. Ron, I'm going to add one more topic before we bring Pod 71 to an end. And I just want to touch back on an interview I did with Kevin Marie, who I've got down as one of the most successful managers in boxing in the UK right now. He's got a stable with a pack load of fighters, a number of fighters. And I just want to get your take on something, mate. Where do you feel as if the sport goes wrong with the future of boxing? I'm not talking about your Adam Azims, and these fighters. I'm talking about your fighters that are going into their professional debut 1-0, 2, 3, 4-0, talk about those fighters that are just starting off the early point of your career. How can boxing improve to make sure those fighters are nurtured in the right way, looked after, but also make sure they have a very decent career by the time they do end their journey in boxing? What do you think the sport needs to do to improve?
God, that's a very broad question, isn't
Listen,
it?
you put me on the spot with your quick fire questions, so now you know how it feels.
I think preparing the boxers for all eventualities. Not all of everyone's going to make it into the superstars. They're not all going to be headlining. So these boxers need to realize that there's more to life out. There's obviously life outside of boxing as well. Kind of preparing for that as well, and being patient. I think we live in a very social media. We want immediate kind of results with boxers. We know we have to be patient with these guys. It's a slow process when they make their way to the top. What do you think?
I remember I spoke to Johnny Nelson about 18 months ago. I'd done the 10 quick fire question thing with him. And he said that when he was a young fighter, Barry Hearn used to look after him. After every fight, would have their fighters take out a sum of money and give it to him so that he could look after and they can hand back to him when they ended their career. And at the time, he thought, well, what's this all about? But in the end, he said it was probably the best thing Barry ever made him did. So, we've had a few fighters over the last few sort of months, and even after COVID, have called it a day with boxing. Obviously, I'm not sure whether it's down to funding issues or whatever it is. So, I think financially, look, I get what's going on in Saudi Arabia, and I'm glad that something like that's happening because we're finally getting everybody working together. But I just think, just because these guys were 1, 2, and 0, just because they may not have millions of followers on social media and they may not be selling out arenas, just like those guys that are actually doing all of that, these guys are still risking their lives as well getting in the ring. So I think let's start pumping some more money, not just to the younger fighters, but let's start pumping more money into women's boxing as well. Like I said to you, I was honored to be at that fight on Saturday night. And I'd love to see the younger fighters not having to rely on selling tickets just to get paid. We've got to look at maybe these promoters setting up a trust fund. We've got to get more sponsorship deals in place. I mean, I know times are hard. I know small businesses are probably still feeling the effects of COVID, but these guys are going in that ring and they're risking everything else just to keep us entertained, and they're trying to put food on their table. So I think financially it plays a big part in terms of how these younger fighters grow into that next phase of their career. And yeah, I put it back down to finance. Of course, more following in social media, all that helps. Getting big fights, perhaps after 7, 8 fights, also helps. But let's start financially start to look after these boys, and let's start giving them, a piece of the pie. We've had Fury versus Ngannou out in Saudi. We've had the huge Day of Reckoning card. We're going to get Joshua and Ngannou. We're going to get Queensbury versus Matchroom. We're going to get Fury versus Usyk in the Undisputed. I'd like to see Saudi maybe invest in a sort of a revolution card, a card just based on the future of the sport. Where Turkey and Al Sheikh comes together with your Frank Warrens and your Eddie Hearns and says, for one night only, let's get your best young fighters, let's get them fights, but let's put some serious money into these fighters so that in 6 weeks after this fight, they're not having to worry about, I need to get back in the ring quickly, so I've got to sell tickets just to make it financially, and I've got to gain more followers on social media. I want to see the boxing world start looking after the younger fighters, the new up and coming fighters, better financially, but also more opportunities given out, because one day Crawford, Spence, Fury, Usyk, Bivol, these fighters, Canelo, they're going to walk away from the sport. And then we're sort of looking behind us to see who's the next big thing. And the next big thing are these guys that are starting out. Steve Clark on Saturday night, being looked after. The Smith brothers, professional debut, sold over 1,000 tickets. Fantastic news, brilliant for him, made up for the kid. Good talent as well, but that's not the case with every fighter. So every fighter in his position. So let's try and not just the promoters, fans like me, yourself, every boxing fan out there. Let's see if there's more we can do for these younger fighters, because it's not a long sport, and it's a sport that can end just like that. We've seen horrific injuries happen in the boxing ring. Yeah, that's what I would do in terms of helping the next gen in their careers in boxing. Did I say enough, or did I say too much?
More than enough. I think absolutely. The points that you made are great. Yeah, look, it's boxing's. It's not it's serious business. You're putting your life on the line, and they need to be protected in and out the ring. I reiterate that. Not all of these, young fighters are going to make it, so they need, I think that's a great story that you told about what you said about Johnny Nelson, about putting money away. That should be something there should be some sort of education program as well about the dangers of, life after boxing as well. That's what they need to really think about. The boxer's life can be cut short very quickly through injury, through an eye injury, or, one wrong punch in the wrong area. So, these boxers need to be protected as well. So I'm all for that.
Anything else you want to add, my man?
No, I'm looking forward to the Usyk and Fury fight coming up soon. So I hope that all goes well. I hope Tyson's got his game face on. There's a lot of kind of John Fury was ranting about his son wasn't in the right place, having to go at the team. But let's just hope he's, we've not seen him much on social media, so maybe that's saying something about how serious he's taking this fight, which he needs to, because obviously Usyk's got 3 of the belts, Tyson's got 1, so we're gonna since Lennox Lewis.
I would just like to put on notice that those 3 belts that Usyk's got, Tyson never lost those belts, by the way. They're just on hold for the time being. He's keeping them warm and polished. But anyway, listen, that's a podcast for a few weeks' time. Don't forget, Buatsi Aziz next week as well. I'll be at that.
Oh, no way. You're lucky guy, man.
Well, I'm on it. And guys, if you don't believe I'm on it, just go and check out the new content that's been uploaded throughout the last week. There's some good interviews up there, and get involved. But nonetheless, we have kickstarted our journey on 2024. We've got our first show out of the way. We've got a show on Saturday night and then the following week, and it's a very, very exciting time to be a boxing fan. Ron, my brother, I appreciate you as always. Thank you very much for taking your time out to join us today on podcast 71. To the viewers out there, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell for further lights out boxing content. Check us out on all the social media platforms. I'll even put Ron's Instagram link in there. He's got millions of followers. I'm pretty sure he'd appreciate a few more million followers.
I'll share my OnlyFans as well, if you don't mind.
You don't want to subscribe to that, people. They say it's only £12 a month.
Great content. Forget about these influencers, just follow me instead.
I wasn't so tired, I'd laugh. Guys, thank you very much for taking your time out to join us on this week's podcast. If you want to listen to it on any of the audio platforms, links are below in the description. And if you need any legal representation in court, we are sponsored by the one and only Spartans Law, and a massive shout out to Spartans Law for their continued support as always. And that's all we've got time for today on podcast 71 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.